Hello, this is Pixel Freak, and today I've got the 7th piece of the Final Fantasy Dimensions walkthrough. So if you see all the numbers here on the screen, that's because I leveled up, and if you'd like to see how much I leveled up, you can rewind the video and pause it there to see the numbers. Fortunately, I didn't have a lot of space to sit and look at the numbers for a while or even discuss them, but for the most part, I leveled up from about level 8 and 10 to about level 14, 15. So gained about 5 levels or so. And a lot of that, what I was doing was picking up gold to clean out the armor and weapons and magic from that town there. So, this video contains a single dungeon. I'm gonna cross this mountain here and just clean it out. Castle Liene. We're on our way to the castle. The castle will probably actually be the next video. I love it. That's like, so almost like they were maybe, either they were whispering, which they probably should have said like whisper, or they were doing like some kind of secret handshake. That's kind of a weird animation though for a secret handshake. Just walk back and forth in place. It's okay, this guy's cool. He can walk in place. So if I'm remembering correctly, this particular mountain actually has quite a few treasures in it. And I do try to pick them all up. I think I actually get all of them in this place. And as far as jobs are concerned, you probably shouldn't necessarily try to match the jobs that I'm using here. For the most part, I'd already maxed out the primary jobs that I'd kind of taken a note of which guys I want to be the primary for which particular job. Like for instance, with Soul, I take him and he's going to be my monk guy, my kind of bare-fisted brawler. Even though in this game, they don't fight bare-fisted. But anyways, and then Aegis is my warrior, which he's actually, looks like he's playing a warrior here. Sarah is a black mage, and Dusk is going to be a white mage. Sarah is actually a black mage summoner. But for this particular video, I'm just kind of filling out the other jobs, picking up what levels they have empty in them, just for the skills and the different augmentations that you can get with the jobs. It's a good idea to do. I mean, if you max out a job, swap it out. You know, pick up the other things that are in the other jobs, because you might as well, if you're still going to get the AP no matter what, you might as well put it to good use. The only problem with doing that is, this comes up later in the game, if you just fill your guys out into whatever job, or even a job that maybe you're not very effective with, you have to be a little bit cautious with how you're playing the game. It's for when you start playing Noct and his team again later on. If you just kind of put everybody to whatever you want to without thinking about what equipment you have or how effective that team will be, you're going to die, or at least you're going to have a really bad time. So here, I mean, I'm using a couple red mages, a warrior, and a black mage, and you really can't go wrong with red mages. I don't really advise people to use red mages too much, just because early in the game they're very effective, late in the game they're very ineffective. So if you put a bunch of points into red mage, or you really try to go deep into that tree, I think you're really going to pay for it at the end of the game. It's almost the same as just going jobless. You really don't want to do that. So I think here I actually went the wrong way, and I think you're going to see me double back. But there was a Y in the road, and I went right, and you're supposed to go left. There's the treasure box that actually's got something decent in it, if I remember correctly. It's at least an ether. But I'm going to go a little bit farther here and determine that, oh crap, I was supposed to go back. Yep. Yeah, so I'm going to grab this treasure box, and then I'm probably going to double back and go back to get the other treasure box. So I apologize for the extra footage, but it is what it is. Sometimes I don't do things completely in order. The amount of time it would take to go through these things and just map them all out perfectly so that I do a perfect walkthrough, that'd just be insane. Would totally not be worth my time. I'd be working on this walkthrough forever. So I like how all the different characters, like, they have their own kind of spin on each job. So as you can see, Sarah and Soul right now are both red mages, and her hat's kind of tipped up and his hat's kind of tipped down. He's kind of like the silent badass type, and she's kind of like the goofy bastard. Pretty cool. It's nice to see that. And some of them, I like having different guys as monks. Like, they look a little bit different when they're getting in, like, their fighting positions. It's pretty cool. I'm pretty fond of the monk job so far in this game. And at this point, I'm walking through right now Chapter 1, but I'm pretty far in Chapter 2 as I'm playing the game, doing my double playthrough, which I explained in an earlier video as well. So there's a lot of guys here that are weak against ice. You'll see there's the fire dog beast guys, and I think there's another enemy that's really weak against ice. It's smart to use Blizzard here. Definitely you're going to want some sort of mage, red or black. Somebody needs to be casting spells in here. It'll just make your time a lot easier going through this place. Oh, the bombs. The bombs, I think, are also weak against Blizzard. I should probably give my obligatory note on bombs as well. Oh, I didn't see what came out of that box. I don't remember what it was. Nonetheless, that's a good one to get if I remember correctly. There's the Flame Hound. The Basilisk, I think that they're weak against Blizzard as well. Which is kind of funny, though. This seems like a very fire-rich mountain. Alright, back on the track. Good safe spot. Always remember to, when you get to a safe spot, check your mana. If your mana is doing okay, which mine's doing okay. Am I actually going to use a 10? It doesn't seem like a very good idea. Yeah, just save the game, keep moving. If your mana is getting kind of low, use a 10. And you should also take note that a little bit later in the game, not far from here actually, you get your mana pool high enough that if you're empty on mana, a tent is not going to fill it up all the way. You need to make sure that every time you use a tent that you check your mana to make sure it's high enough for you to proceed. You'll get, I think you get about 100 points of mana per tent. So you might have to use multiple tents before you move on. They hired ninjas. Hiring ninjas is unforgivable. You should never hire ninjas. So very clearly here they're painting the Empire as big D-bags, which is I don't know, that's pretty consistent. Usually it's, you know, this big power, governing power, big political power that's actually running around and collecting territories, acting like allies, and then double-crossing everybody. It's actually kind of the storyline they use for Final Fantasy XII. Which for me, the story of Final Fantasy XII was really bad. And the problem with Final Fantasy XII's storyline was that it was overly political. It wasn't... ta-da! New fusion ability. It wasn't the same as many of these other Final Fantasy games where you're kind of like this hodgepodge of raggedy guys. I guess you are that in Final Fantasy XII, but the overarching story was not really, didn't feel mystical the same way. It kind of felt like the second three Star Wars movies that came out, 1, 2, and 3. they seemed overly political, so much so that it just kind of felt really boring. It wasn't really exciting. And that was my problem with Final Fantasy XII. Now that hasn't been the same thing in this game. There's not like a whole bunch of presidents and colonels and stuff getting around and talking about war plans. So this game very much is very well done in the nostalgic way to kind of match the games that came out, I would say, before Final Fantasy VII. Everything about this game feels like one of those. It's very, very truthful to it, and it actually is just as good of a game. I would say this is just as good of a game as the best of those. This is a really good game. Much like Final Fantasy, I would say 5. Kick with a red mage. It just needs to be done. So you can see here I'm really kind of mixing jobs at this point. I'm casting Cure with my Black Mage, and I'm kicking people with my Red Mage. It seems as though the mixtures as you move through the game. Early on here, it's kind of fun to mix them up, but I really don't take that path moving forward. I'm assuming that later in the game there will be a lot of really cool customizations that you're able to do by mixing those jobs, but as you progress through Chapter 1 and even the early stages of Chapter 2, those mixing of jobs, for the most part, are not really effective. So you have to plan them, though. You have to really plan, what's going to be your job, and that's part of the deal too. Is you get these points to go deeper into each job, and early in the game here, it's almost better to just go really deep into one job, especially if you're playing a melee character, because the melee characters, they gain their abilities without having to purchase them at a store. So let's say the monk versus the black mage. Well, the monk is going to continue gaining skills as you go into level 15. However, if you take your black mage to level 15, sure, he can use level 7 magic, but he can't find any, so it's really kind of useless. So if you're a mage, it does kind of pay off to dabble a little bit in multiple jobs and kind of mix things up a little bit. Do a black mage summoner or a white mage black mage, something like that. Or a white mage summoner if you really want to. But for melee characters, it's better to just stick to one tree, at least at the beginning of the game here. And for that reason, most of my characters don't use cross-job functions, just because I found it to be more effective to go single tree, at least until I've come close to maxing out those trees. Or those jobs, I should say. I shouldn't say trees, because they're not necessarily, it's not a skill tree, it's a job, it's a single line through. So now we're coming down the other side of the mountain. And fortunately, I think it's not too much of a spoiler at this point. I can say there's no boss for this dungeon. There's no... Usually you get to one of these mountains and, at the peak of it, there will be an enemy. We've already passed the peak. That was where the guys kind of stopped and talked for a little while. But in this particular area, there is... Why am I going backwards? There's no dungeon. Oh, there's no boss, I mean. Just kind of finish it up and move on. There are some good bosses coming up. They're just not here. Did I miss something? Huh. That was interesting. Not sure how I got confused there. So that is it for Part 7 of the Final Fantasy Dimensions walkthrough. Part 8 will be at Castle Liene. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, this has been Pixel Freak.